the yapping hyenas of Reform UK in the mainstream media, who I don't think put the country first, are insistent that there not only not be a deal between Rupert Lowe and Nigel Farage, but that they don't even want talks to take place. To me, that proves they are party of patriarchs and not patriots. Because why would you try and at least stop talks from taking place, negotiations, given that at some point an electoral pact may become an inevitability? But instead, we get folks like Talk TV's paid reform mouthpiece Isabel Oakeshott, who said that her partner, Richard Tice, because it's all about Richard Tice, right? It's all about Richard Tice and his ego. And of course, he could not possibly work with Rupert Lowe.
He knows full well that Nigel, first of all, is never going to do a deal with him because the two of them cannot work together. Why? Egos. You know, and I'm talking about Rupert Lowe's ego here. He is not capable of working with many people. Bluntly, sorry, that's the truth. You know, that is the experience of his fellow Reform MPs. And, you know, there are one or two of them, well, all of them are quite reasonable people. I mean, certainly my partner, Richard, has worked with all sorts of characters in the past, you know, difficult and challenging personalities. And, you know, he's very clear he cannot work with Rupert Lowe. Lee Anderson, Nigel Farage said, I think this, you know, sometime in the fairly recent past, that Lee Anderson said he couldn't work with him either. So he's a very difficult character.
Oh, country before party and all that, right, Isabel? Seriously. She's also pushing this idea, after Rupert Lowe's interview here on Outspoken, that he has admitted that he's in cahoots with the Tories because he said, I've been in touch with Kemi. Now, clearly that's nuts. As Carl Benjamin of the Lotus Eater said, everyone is in touch with everyone. Nigel texted Rupert, are they in cahoots? Good grief. This is totally unserious. I mean, indeed, Nigel Farage used to have the odd text message with Keir Starmer, Slippery Starmer. Doesn't mean they're in cahoots. It's just part of a reality of politics. Henry Bolton, Restore's Defence and National Security spokesman, responding, the politics may vary, but I believe the country expects its national politicians to collaborate on a case-by-case basis where and when their aims align, such as holding public officials to account on the Public Accounts Committee, and it is in the interests of the country that they do so. I'm disappointed in the growing habit of politicians and commentators such as Isabel Oakeshott to condemn such practice and argue that tribal affiliation and interest comes before those of the country and accountable government. Please stop it. And Basil the Great added, Rupert Lowe offers the hand of friendship, putting egos aside to work together, uniting the right and giving patriots a chance to take our country back. Reform have lost 10% in the polls since October and could really use this boost. Instead, they arrogantly reject it. Not only that, they then spread lies that Rupert Lowe secretly is working with the Tories. Reform have shown everyone who they truly are. They've put themselves first before the country as usual. Honestly, they're terrible. And of course, it was only a matter of time before Matt Goodwin came out against this deal too. He just has this visceral hatred of the young men in Restore Britain. This was his Substack, Why Reform Should Avoid a Pact with Restore. And he wrote, Reform must keep throwing a wide net at all times. That is what first past the post majoritarian systems demand. You do not win power in these systems by appealing to a small group of voters who are already aligned. You win by building the broadest possible electoral coalition. This is what Margaret Thatcher did, what Tony Blair did, what Boris Johnson did. None of them prioritised ideological purists. And this broad coalition must also include millions of British people from minority backgrounds, including many British Jews, who are often just as patriotic and just as strongly opposed to immigration, broken borders, two-tier policing, Islamism, sectarianism, the radical left, and record taxes as their white British counterparts. Restore voters, they should be welcomed with open arms into the broad coalition. But senior Restore activists, here we go, and their allies in independent media, who spent the last year insisting that Nigel Farage must never become Prime Minister, insulting senior Reform spokespersons, harassing Reform activists during by-election campaigns, failing to police extremists within their parties, and becoming a Trojan horse for the same anti-Semitism and open racism we see in Zach Polanski's Greens, no thanks. Reform must always remember that many of the people it hopes to attract have watched the online Restore ecosystem descend into personal abuse, conspiracy theories, and language they find deeply upsetting. I mean, Matt Goodwin, he is just establishment through and through, isn't he? Just establishment through and through, always has been. As Landor pointed out, Matt Goodwin, co-author of Suicide of a Nation, a book about demographic oblivion, would rather side with the Lib Dems and Labour than restore Britain. Can't begin to tell you how fucked Reform are. So I would say, Kelly J. Keane, given you are, I guess you would say, more aligned to the Reform side of the argument, that it's actually the Reform folk who have been coming out over the past couple of days and not even countenancing a discussion. And I'm like, not only is that totally ego-driven, I think it's suicidal, because the own Reform polling, Kelly J, actually shows that even if Restore Britain got between 2 to 3% in most constituencies, obviously it's on a case-by-case basis, but in most constituencies, it would deny Reform UK taking enough seats to ever consider winning a majority government. If you're tired of the mainstream narrative and want the unfiltered truth, you are in the right place. Hit subscribe, join the Outspoken community right now, and let's keep the conversation going in the comments.
That's quite interesting, isn't it? So Restore would actually prevent a right-wing government. It doesn't sound so great, does it? I just think Restore wouldn't exist without Reform. And I know there's a lot of very upset, injured people that are a bit like a jealous ex-girlfriend. I get it. I really get it. They feel a bit let down and disappointed that Nigel said some things and did some stuff that they don't really want him to. And yet, the only chance, I do sound like a broken record, I apologise, I'm not going to do a particular lot of nuance here, but if we want a right-wing government, the only chance we have is Reform. And I don't think that Restore is in a position to wag the dog, to be honest. And I think that's what that was. As soon as I saw it, and I like Rupert Lowe. I think he speaks well. He reminds me a bit of a poor man's Jeremy Clarkson. I like the guy. And I'm not surprised he has a following. He's charismatic and safe, and he reminds us of like a posh old uncle, if I had any posh old uncles. But I just felt like he came out with this public speech, and it just felt like a bit of a demand that Nigel was in a position where he couldn't really say yes, let's do it, because he looked weak. And he couldn't say no because he looks uncooperative. So I think it was just a bit of a political move. I would just like us to get a right-wing government. And however that is achieved, I don't care, by hook or by crook, morally, immorally, I don't care how it happens, it just has to.
So, Father Calvin Robinson, this is interesting because you are now a member of Restore Britain. And the argument that Kelly J is making is the argument that most senior Reform UK figures stick to, which is actually that there are lots of good things about your party, there are lots of good things about Rupert Lowe, but you just need to exit stage left, right? You, Father Calvin, and your sort of personal desire to be part of a more purist movement is going to stop a right-wing government. How do you respond to that?
It's just an argument that doesn't work on me. This idea that Reform is the only way, therefore submit to Reform. I'm like, well, why are they the only way? First and foremost, there are 3 years until the next general election. Anything can happen between now and then. Nigel Farage may retire, he may die, anything could happen. And so Restore has a chance. It's got time to build itself. But secondly, it's not anything that Nigel Farage has done or said in particular that makes me not trust him. It's the fact that he always constantly capitulates, and he's still petrified of the lefty media. He still wants to be liked far too much. And so I don't see him as right-wing. I see him as playing to the center and playing to the left all the time. And this idea that we must have a right-wing government at any costs, not at any costs, no, not at any morality, no. I want a moral, good government more than I want a right-wing government. I hope it's a moral, good right-wing government, but I wouldn't sacrifice my morals in order to get someone like Farage in. And so what does right-wing mean? Well, Farage has just said his bravest, most accomplished achievement is destroying the right of British politics. Ask him what you think he's accomplished over the last 20 years. More than Brexit, he will say destroying the right of British politics. And so again, he's playing to the left every single time.
And he's referring to the BNP there, right?
And UKIP, and probably, other parties, such as he thinks he's got a hold on Restore. But I think the only chance we have in this country, really and truly, is if there's some kind of collaboration or uniting of the right. And it does have to be between restore and reform, and probably some elements of the Conservative Party. We may have to hold our nose because the left will unite. The Greens and Labour, the Mohammedans, they will unite, and they will destroy us if they get into power. And so we have to unite around good. And I think Rupert Lowe's offer was good. All of those points were fantastic. Who could turn those down?
Kelly J, how do you respond? But first, a quick word about Bubs Naturals and a supplement that is receiving a great deal of attention because of something I am obsessed with to support both physical performance and mental sharpness: creatine monohydrate. As you get older, maintaining strength, recovering properly, and keeping your energy levels up can require a bit more effort than it did in your 20s. Trust me, as someone in my 40s trying to stay fit, still focused on losing weight, I know the body may not bounce back quite as quickly, and it becomes increasingly clear that staying healthy is also about recovering intelligently, supporting your muscles, and properly fueling your body. Now, that is where Bubs Naturals Creatine Monohydrate comes in. Creatine, sometimes treated as though it's only for bodybuilders. That's not true, look at me. What it does, though, is help your body produce a quick energy during exercise and other high-intensity activities. So that means it can help support strength, power, lean muscle growth, and recovery. But its benefits not limited to the gym. Creatine also helps fuel the brain and can support focus, mental clarity, and cognitive performance. And it could not be easier to take, by the way. You simply mix 1 scoop into water, coffee, or a smoothie, whatever you were drinking, actually. There's no complicated routine. And importantly, Bubs does creatine properly. Its creatine monohydrate is made using CreaPure, which is widely regarded as the gold standard. No fillers, dyes, artificial additives, sweeteners, or unnecessary ingredients. Bubs Naturals, by the way, is really something you should know about. It also makes collagen peptides to support joints, skin, hair, nails, and recovery. Hydrate or dye electrolytes to support hydration and sustain energy. And MCT oil creamers to support energy and mental clarity. So, live better for longer. We want that, right? With Bubs Natural. And this is so exciting. For a limited time, Outspoken viewers and listeners can get 20% off their entire order. So just head to bubsnaturals.com and use the code Outspoken at checkout. So that is bubsnatural.com. The code Outspoken for 20% off your entire order. I've put a link in the description too. Oh, and by the way, after your purchase, they will ask where you heard about them. Please support the show and tell them that Outspoken sent you. But now, back to the show.
Well, I don't think anyone needs to unite right now. I think maybe they'll unite after the election results, and then they realise that they need those few extra seats, which I am all for. And I think you're right, Kelvin. I do think it will take the Tories as well. I think they will need to do that. I think we need to be a bit more like, Carol Vorderman. It's the only time I'm ever going to say such a terrible thing. But they go around and they unite the left and they do this tactical voting. Yeah. And I think that will be absolutely essential, whatever it takes to get over the line. And I do feel if we don't do this by hook or by crook, and I'd like to remain principled, but I'd also like this country to have a future. And I wonder if you can do both. But if it's Andy Burnham, which it will be, Andy Burnham or Nigel Farage, I'm Nigel Farage every day of the week. And I think it will come down to that choice.
Rebecca Jane, when you were deputy leader of UKIP, you were quite determined to try and unite the right, and you found it impossible.
Yeah, it was a nightmare. And that's the whole point. And I see it happening again. Like, it's absolutely pointless. Reform will never unite with anybody. Look at what they did with the Brexit Party situation. They do not have morals. All they want to actually do is to get into power. They don't particularly care how they do it, but they're going to try and do it on their own. And what I have an issue with in them, basically, Isabel was doing Reform's dirty work. They're too afraid to come out and to say, no, actually, we want to do this on our own. So they send people like her out onto national television to say it for them. That is exactly what is going to happen. And then she's doing an absolute smear campaign on Rupert Lowe. You can sit there on TV, you can diss Rupert Lowe all you like, but what you're actually doing is you're actually dissing his voters, his supporters, and the people that back him. And if you are so blatant in not caring less about those people, then that says everything about you and about your morals and about where you stand in this. So Reform are not going to have those talks. They will try and say that they are doing because it looks good and they think people will believe them, but they will not do it. They have got so much ego, they will do it by themselves. And would I prefer Nigel Farage over Andy Burnham? That is a really tough choice. Like Calvin said, we've got 3 years. I'm most certainly hoping that Rupert can do better. But I really like Kemi Badenoch. So
yeah, I mean, Kelly J, can I just, I guess, raise, because it's really interesting, I think, what Rebecca's saying about how people like Isabel Oakeshott are used. And what annoys me is that this was all put to them 2 years ago, that the decisions that they were making in terms of both Tommy Robinson and Rupert Lowe were going to cost them very dearly. And remember, I was involved in lots of these conversations, Kelly J, and I don't forget what they said. And at the time, Richard Tice and Isabella Oakeshott and that ilk within Reform UK were celebrating Rupert Lowe's departure. They actually said to me, this is, and I was saying, you're crazy. You are crazy. You are making such a big mistake. But they said to me, this is great, because what it does is it makes it clear to the mainstream media and the political establishment that Reform UK is the centre right. And it's great that we're waving goodbye to these extremists. And I was like, hang on a moment. You're talking about outspoken viewers. You're talking about the millions of people at the Unite the Kingdom rally. These are not extremists. But they actually thought that it was going to be a really positive thing. They also believed that Rupert Lowe would fail. And so I sort of feel a bit like, if these are the political strategists who are behind Reform UK, I don't trust them at all to get into Downing Street. Like, even if you put morals to one side and you're just thinking cold, hard, raw political strategy, Kelly J, they made a massive mistake.
Then we're screwed, aren't we? That's it. It's game over. Bye-bye UK. I mean, I've been to Idaho. Looks very nice. Property's quite cheap. But it's bye-bye. It's bye-bye UK. If Farage doesn't get in, I don't see Rupert getting the numbers. And it does have to be centre right. We're so far in this kind of almost communist dystopia that I don't think you're going to get somewhere who's like further than centre right. I mean, look, I hope to God I'm completely
They said the same thing about Trump, though.
Well, yeah, but you vote for Trump. You can't vote
but
for
look,
Nigel.
if we get someone centre right, it's going to delay the inevitable a little bit longer. We need someone radical because the system is a mess. Mass immigration means we're literally being ethnically replaced. The culture is being eradicated. We need a radical answer, and that means that a centrist or a centre-right party needs to have radicals within it. The party itself doesn't necessarily have to be radical, but this is the mistake that Conservative Party made in that pushing people. Like my membership of the Conservative Party was ejected like 3 years ago. Like, they have to be able to keep people like us in. Now, Reform should learn that. Nigel Farage should learn that lesson and say, yes, we need the Tommy Robinsons, we need the Rupert Lowes, we need the Calvin Robinsons, the Kelly J. Keens, and we also need to be broader than that. Otherwise, it is kaput. You're right.
Well, I think the Conservatives, this is what I hope. Nigel gets in. He has a good 5 years. Whatever he makes of it, it gives us a little bit of a break from the Uniparty. And then maybe the Tories can get their act together and start being Conservatives again. And then we have a genuine choice on the right. But that's my hope. But you know, I'm prepared to be wrong, and I've got a little bit of savings, and I can just move out forever.
You need two things from whatever party gets in next. One, you need them to be honest, which we've got some issues there with Reform. And two, you actually need them to be totally fearless in what they say. And when they can't even stand up themselves and say, no, we don't actually want to have talks with Rupert Lowe, and they use somebody else to do it, you are not going to get a party that is going to change this country, because unfortunately it's going to have to take somebody with some severe courage to say the things that need to be said, and that is not Reform.
Dan Wotton Outspoken is your no spin, no bias, no censorship outlet for independent news. We have no